Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Pray podcast today.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of what you do, and it's really an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm a big fan of intelligent cars, and maybe I'm a little bit less of a fan of them at the end of this episode.
Oh, it's guaranteed.
So can you tell me in the audience what do you do and how did you get into that field?
Yes, I started this company called Privacy for Cars with a very simple idea. Cars collect a lot of data. And when I started to look into this over a decade ago, it seemed to me there were really zero protections from both a privacy and a security standpoint. Fast forward to today, it has improved a little bit, but really not much. And so that's really what we do. We're dedicated to try to turn your cars into a more private space, give you more choice, give you more understanding of what they do, give you more control.
Cool. So when did cars start collecting let's go even further back. When did cars start collecting data?
Actually, it's a very, very long story. People have not realized that this goes back to really the turn of the century. 25 years ago now. OnStar was actually started in the previous millennia, right? And they started with very simple things in which they had a SIM, card just like your phone does, and so that you could call somebody, or in case of an accident, the car would dial automatically at the scene of the accident. Bluetooth was introduced in cars just about the same time. And navigation actually goes even older than that, but really things started to evolve. Uh, Bluetooth became pretty common around the 2006, 2007. It became really, really common. Navigation became really, really common around 10, 12. And then new modern telematics, which is again this ability of putting essentially a cell phone inside your car that calls home all the time, has really exploded since 2016, 2017. So for the last decades, cars have been collecting data. But as with all things in technology, they accelerate, right?
Yeah.
And so the average car that you can buy new on today from a dealer lot collects somewhere, around 25 gigabytes of data per day.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, they've become, massive collection of sensors and interconnected computers, and we still call them cars, but they are very, very different from what you and I were driving just a few years ago.
Gotcha. So what kind of data is collected by kind of the modern car?
All sorts. I think that people understand pretty intuitively that when I drive the car around, there's a GPS, it's going to collect all my breadcrumbs. And I think another thing that is most intuitive to people is that when you connect your phone to your car, data from your phone will migrate into your car. But it's far more extensive than that, and it's far more concerning than that. I mean, nowadays, cars, before you even open the car has sensed your key. It knows how far you are. It may automatically unlock it for you. You sit down, it takes your weight. It knows automatically who you are because your phone is connected. So now it knows it's Andrea, it's not Chris. And by the way, my messages in clear text are being automatically synced up. It knows which apps I'm running on my phone, what are the recent photos I've taken with my phone, and so on and so forth, right? And so it is a lot of stuff. And then you start driving, and it's not just the breadcrumbs that are dropped second by second and collected. All the other sensors allow for a very minute tracking of your behavior. Your steering wheel has sensor, your accelerator has sensor, your brakes has sensor. And so beyond the GPS position that your phone has, your car has all these additional sensors to really micro-locate you and really fingerprint you based on how you drive. All of that builds a profile. You get scored on that. I'm sure we're going to talk later today about what, how does this impact my insurance? How does this impact my car payment? How does it impact my ability to get a lease next year when I return in the car? It does all those things. And so, yeah, so cars collect a lot of this data. And again, a lot of this data is transmitted real time or near real time. And some of it stays on board on the car, but then is either downloaded, say when you take your car for service, or even more concerning, is left behind when you finish to rent a car or you return your lease or you sell your car and you're essentially handed your phone unlocked to a complete stranger.
Okay, so I have more questions in such a random order here based on that last 2 minutes than I can think of. What do you foresee is like, what's the best way to work through kind of what do we do with the stuff that's being collected? How do we mitigate it? And what are kind of some of the weird things uh, that we may have to deal with?
Yes. So two things. First of all, I believe that informed consumers are always better off. And unfortunately, the vehicle manufacturers have decided that the best way for you to learn about all this stuff is to read their privacy policies and their terms. And by the way, the policies and the terms of all the service providers that are in their cars, which of course already getting a list of those is pretty tricky. And so um, that was very dissatisfying for us. By the way, it typically takes a college education or
Yeah.
post-grad education to be able to understand them, right? So only a third of car buyers can even understand what's written in those documents. That's how complex they are. And so a few years ago, I started to read papers about privacy labeling systems. And I think that your audience will be familiar, if you have an iPhone and you go on the store, and then later on Google did the same, is every app now has this, it's called in technical terms a nutrition label. It will tell you what type of data the app collects, and does it share with third parties, and
Yeah.
does it collect your geolocation, right? And Apple has really been at the forefront of this and giving more and more controls to users as time passed. When Apple did it, the regulators went to Google and said, we don't understand. If Apple can do it, why can't you? So Google created the second big labeling system in the world. And that was it. And so I thought, well, why don't we try to do this for cars? And so I started to research this maybe 4 years ago. I started to work with a bunch of interns first, and then we moved this internally into our R&D department. And then 2 summers ago, we released to the public this website that is called vehicleprivacyreport.com. And we've been described as the Carfax of privacy. And essentially, you go there, you type in the VIN of your car, and we will tell you what we know about the privacy of the vehicle in simple terms. So we try to translate all the legal mumbo jumbo that the manufacturers put together into a set of 10 icons, 5 to explain what type of data your car collects, and 5 to explain where it's going. And then we also started over time to improve it and tell you, hey, did you know your car has Sirius XM? And what does Sirius XM does? Click here and you can find out more. And then we started to tell you, hey, who's your auto finance companies? What do they do with to protect your data? Do they do anything or they don't? What about your insurance company? And so the report has grown organically over time. We're now at the 4th release of it. And the 4th release, I'm really excited about it because we just released it in March of 2025. And for the first time, we're giving consumers the ability to take control of their data.
Oh,
We show
nice.
them what the manufacturer allows them to do in their state. And some manufacturers are, they allow you to have control. Some of them don't allow you at all, and really depends a lot on where you live. You're in California, so your situation is far better than mine because I live in Georgia, okay? But we thought, let's make it visible to consumers because the best way to drive better behavior of companies is to make it visible.
Yep.
2, we give you a simple ability. If you don't like what you see and what the practices of those companies are because of them think that you shouldn't have any controls, we make it very easy for you to say, Chris, would you like to connect with the government authorities that have the ability to regulate and enforce this? And we make it literally 2 clicks away for you to be able to go and file a complaint. And then we also offer the ability for you to appoint us, which we do for free. It's a part of our pro bono efforts. We do a lot of things for free for consumers. to appoint us, and we'll try to do our best to put you back in control of your data. So that's what we do over there. And I think that should help most people in most situations. So whether you are shopping for a car, you bought a car, I think starting at vehiclepricereport.com is a good place, so you can start to take some actions and start to have some understanding of what your car does. And then there are some high-risk situations, going back to your original question.
Yeah.
A big one is when you rent a car, and the other one is when you're ready to sell or return the lease of your car.
But let's talk
And in
about
those
that.
cases, yeah, your car at that point is a little bit like a giant unencrypted hard drive that contains your data. And again, your data comes either from the sensors in the car, or so the more newer the car, the more data you can expect is going to be collected about you, and the data that came from your phone if you connected your phone. And so we think it's a terrible idea for you to leave this data behind.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're seeing a growing number of cases in which this data is being abused. And so what you should do is just like what you do with your phone when you stop using a phone and you get a new one, or your laptop when you stop using it, you get a new one.
Grab a hammer and smash it.
Yes, you can put the car in the crashers, and maybe you can put it on viral social media, and people seeing you crashing your car to protect your data actually gets you a lot of views, and actually you can afford to buy a new car. Or you can try to wipe out the data in the hard drive, in quote marks, which is really not technically a hard drive, but why not wiping what data is in your car before you leave it? And every car has a process. Some of them are simpler than other. My record holder is a vehicle that I won't name, but it takes 56 steps to get rid of all data. And so that's what you should do. And I used to tell people, try to do it by yourself. Then we realized that even professional inspectors, when they try to do their best, typically miss about half the cars. And so we built a little nifty tool, which is free for consumers. We sell it to companies. That's how we actually pay for all this free stuff, so that people in your audience understand that we actually are a for-profit business. We sell these tools to dealerships and fleets and so on and so forth. And we give them away for free to consumers because we think it's the right thing to do. So if you don't know what to do, you can go to privacyforcars.com and you'll find instructions and tools for you to use to help you do that and be safer on the road.
So let's assume I rent a car and I
Yes.
decide I'm going to connect my phone up to it. What, clearly, the car is retaining all the driving history of everybody else who's driven it, where it's gone, all the
Yep.
GPS data. What is it often getting from my phone, which is staying in the car, even though I've disconnected my phone and walked away at the end of the rental?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people think, well, two things we hear frequently from consumers is, well, I just charged my phone. I plugged into the USB port and I just charged it. Well, or I just use Apple CarPlay, or I just use Android Auto. All it does is to show what was on the screen on the phone on the car. That's not how this stuff works. I'm sorry. That's not how it works. Whenever you connect your phone over Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, wired, because you're charging it, the way it works is just like when you plug your phone into a computer. There's going to be data that moves from the computer into your phone and from the phone into the computer. And that data will stay there unencrypted. Very, very common is, for instance, your entire database of text messages in clear text is going to be moving into the car. It's going to stay there forever until somebody deletes it. And so, when I ask people your contacts, those are easy things for people to think about. There's a lot more stuff that goes, that moves around, but those are easy for people to understand. And when people think about why this matters is, well, go through your text messages, right? And, my login with my bank is in there. The confirmation of my last transaction, my credit card is in there. My medical appointment of this morning is in there. And so there's actually sensitive stuff before what I sent to my daughters and my wife, right? And then in the contacts is actually very common to find the things such as your social security number, what's your bank. Many people save the PIN of their debit card in their
Yeah.
contacts and all this kind of stuff. And in fact, I'm doing now a fun project with a professor at the University of Memphis who started hacking into, so he buys infotainment systems on eBay. And of course, nobody
Yeah.
wipes the data from those because it's actually the responsibility of insurance companies. Most insurance companies don't do it, even though it's mandated by law. And then he extracts it. And what is new and fun, and that's why I reached out and I wanted to collaborate with him, is that they use large language models to query what comes out of the data in the car and to custom craft spear phishing emails
Oh,
for you. Dear Chris, I know that you like going to whatever your favorite restaurant is,
yeah.
right? Because I see it in the breadcrumbs that it's a frequent location you go to, and you have the phone number. And by the way, I may have a loyalty number from either your contacts or your text messages. What a wonderful idea to say, dear Chris, we are restaurant
Yeah.
XYZ, and we have this great promotion and click here and blah, 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 right? And so that's what he started to do, right? Is to build these spear phishing campaigns, literally targeted at you based on what your car knows about you. And when I reached out, I told them, I think you need to think a little bit bigger than this because the money is not just in criminals go after money. I mean,
Yeah.
phishing is a criminal enterprise and they do it for profit, as you teach better than I do, right? And the big money is in companies. And if I can spearfish not just the consumer, but I can spearfish the company that leased you the car or had a loan against the car, or I can spearfish your dealership, or I can spearfish your insurance company because I can first get into your personal account and from there I can fish them because now I have perfect understanding. I can tell that I'm you even though I'm not, and then I can get into their systems. That's where the big money is. And so that's what we're trying to collaborate and demonstrate on how easy that is to do. And unfortunately, it's easier than what most people want to do, would like to admit. And so yeah, so these are real things that happen today.
Oh. Eh, Are there any kind of big misconceptions about what data is collected or transferred? I know, like, to me, my assumption is that if you get a car with a that has the ability to connect out wirelessly via SIM card, if it has the ability to be on a cell network, it probably always is, even if you're not paying for the service. Is that generally correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the first of all, most cars today, if you buy a new car today, I can almost guarantee you that it has a SIM card. In fact, most of the cars sold since, I think 98% of the cars sold since 2017 have one. So if you bought a car in the last 5 to 10 years, there's really good odds. And it's actually one of the things we help you understand when you go on vehicle privacy report is my car a dumb car
Yeah.
or it's a smart car that has a SIM card in it? Because it dramatically changes your security and privacy
Yeah.
posture. Um, uh, that connection is typically always on. It was turned on at the factory, actually, even before the car was delivered to your dealership. And then when you pay for the service, what you're really doing is that you're subsidizing a connection that was already
Yeah.
in there. Um, and what is dramatic is that actually we're discovering, we've done a lot of tests and now we have very compelling evidence that since manufacturers are to give these free connections for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, what happens is that very often you end up with the manufacturer and other companies collecting data from a car under the understanding that the original owner, which may be 1 or 2 owners ago,
Yeah.
consented when they bought the car to have this data transmission. You have no idea in the first place that you actually consented to anything. And they have no idea that it's somebody else they're connecting data from, but they're pretty happy collecting this data. So Yeah, there's a lot of stuff broken with privacy because it's just a lot of processes have not been thought out with privacy or security in mind, unfortunately, Chris.
And I assume that every every company that has a connected car with an always on connection, they're motivated to figure out how to pay for that connection.
Yes,
In that, like, if it's costing them, I don't know, a couple of dollars a month, they need for the rest of the life of the car, in order to not have this cost to them, they've got to be able to collect enough data that they can sell it for a profit every month to cover the
oh
cost
yeah, yeah.
of that.
Let's be clear. This is
Yeah,
not the companies being nice to you, and if you read the talking points, they'll tell you all of this is necessary for your safety. Um, but but that's just not what it is. I mean, I don't deny that some safety features require
yeah,
live connections. That's absolutely true. But also, it doesn't mean that, well, yes, you need to have a live connection so that if I get in an accident right now, you need to call the police. And sure as hell, I would like for emergency service to show up. But what's the reason why you keep that location for 10 years?
yeah,
It is exclusively to monetize it, right? And in fact, if you look at just the declarations made to investors, Ford, for instance, recently announced that they expect to make $2,000 per car per year just from data services.
ooh, 2000 a
So
year, oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah. That's their estimate. GM was very close to that number, and then the FTC they had to settle with the FTC because they were selling data of consumers to insurance companies without really telling them this was affecting the rate. So now the FTC force them to settle and to not sell data of consumers. But um, I don't know if the enforcement is there.
Yeah,
That's question number one. And question number two is also, um, well, what is it that they're going to be technically saying that they're complying while, they found some other way to do similar things that meets the language
yeah,
of the settlement, but maybe not quite the spirit. So, and this is not about, I'm just naming these two companies just because
yeah.
they've been in the news, but um, you can expect that just about anybody does the same thing.
How has the car data, like, when you were talking about the car knows who got into it because of the phone. The car is smart with the sensors in the seat because we need to know how much tension to put on the seatbelt based on how much you weigh. We know your movement patterns. I I'll ask another question, but like, could the auto the can the car actually know when you're drunk? Let's say,
So
because
that's
based
a
on, you're like, oh, hey, we know who the driver is, we know what their movements normally are. Gee, now they're
yes.
kind of swaying and weaving a little bit more than they normally would.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. And first of all, it is increasingly common for cars to have a camera that looks at you.
Yeah,
And there's no red blinking dot, just
yeah,
in case people were wondering, right? And it's actually not even visible. Typically, it's a pinhole camera that is put behind the dash where the instruments
yeah,
are. And so people don't even notice that it's there in the first place. And some of them are actually even mounted in the rear view mirror. Some of them even look at the back seat. And they're used to detect people and objects as well. And so you have all these they're called driver monitoring systems. They were born out of safety intentions, as with everything, right? A lot of the innovations in cars came originally from safety, and then people started to think, oh, what else can I do with this data,
yeah,
right? And so there are already many cars that have these attention detection systems. So if you're looking away, and including if you may be intoxicated, you may be looking, down or other ways, and instead of looking at the road, and they will take action based on that.
yeah,
They may, some action is really good. They may sound an alarm and try to get your attention back to the road, or, put hazards on, whatever else. Um, uh, some of them will measure this stuff and becomes part of your driver profile. But where the law is going is that in a few years, it will be mandatory to have systems that are specifically designed for intoxication, specifically for alcohol. And I think we all wanted to live in a safer world. I mean, about 40,000 people lose their life every year because of a collision in a vehicle. And I think it's a terrible number. But there are, of course, many implications from a privacy and security standpoint of those new technologies.
Yeah, because I could see that data being sold to the insurance company and the insurance company going, well, you clearly weren't driving the way that you would normally drive when this accident happened. You must have been intoxicated.
Yeah, and I think that actually, so manufacturers, you will rarely hear me say wonderful things about manufacturers, but I actually think that on this one, manufacturers have been pretty thoughtful. They try to get together and try to decide what standards should be in place to give confidence to consumers so that this technology can be adopted without, pushback. And so there are some principles that an organization called the Future of Privacy Forum put together. Those include, minimizing the data. The data should stay locally on the vehicle. It should not be sent, definitely not to insurance companies and so on. So again, at least there seems to be some thoughtfulness on this one. But at the same time, you can read on the papers of many, many companies facing class actions because they collect a lot of data and they use it in ways that consumers were not aware of, and they were harmed, right?
Yeah.
They were not just in their privacy, not just in their security, but in both financially and in their safety. And I think that the two important cases are, one about data being used for insurance purposes, so people had their insurance rates go up or losing insurance,
Yeah.
Without really knowing that this was happening in the first place. And there's unfortunately a growing list of situations of domestic abuse and other violent crimes that are really originating because bad people realize that you can abuse technology in vehicles and make it do things that are harmful to people.
Yeah. Like I was also thinking of, sometimes there have been, I'll say the manufacturer because they've talked about it. Tesla has come out, and anytime there's a high profile accident, they, within hours, they're often posting online, well, we ran the telemetry of the vehicle, and they didn't press the brake pedal, or they were pressing the gas pedal and not the brake pedal. Do you see more situations coming where the companies are using the data kind of to protect their reputation? Like,
Oh,
we'll be
absolutely.
happy to come out and
Again,
use the data to protect our reputation, but if you want it to, claim that someone else caused the accident, we're not going to release the data to you without you jumping
yes.
through tons of hoops.
Yeah, so this is what I find amazing, right? Two things that I find amazing. One is there's a very, very special computer inside your car that is called the EDR, the electronic data recorder. The electronic data recorder is essentially the black box, not for planes, but for
Yeah.
cars, right? And it collects a lot of data, but just like the DVR of your house, it records it over and over and over. But when you have an accident, when you have an impact, it freezes the last few seconds of this data and a few seconds after the impact. And that's used essentially for accident reconstruction. These technologies have been around for a long time. And that device is highly regulated. Back in 2016, Congress passed a law, the Driver Privacy Act, where essentially it says that if somebody wants to have access to this data, either they need to have the permission of the owner, or there needs to be a court that orders access to the data, or it's a case of some emergency, whatever, right? But so that one computer is highly, highly protected and regulated. And it's been litigated in courts, by the way, it standing the test of courts. But that is the only one.
Yeah.
And again, the average new car has about 100 computers. And so, I like to say that, you got 99 problems that the DDR ain't one. But that's where we are, right? The reality is that you can extract much more long-term and much more personal data from an infotainment system you can from a
Yeah.
VR. The VR contains things like what millisecond did I press on the pedal of the brakes, and how hard did I press? At what millisecond the seatbelt retention? At what millisecond the airbag deployed with how much power? It's really highly technical data.
Yeah.
You and I will be hard pressed looking at the data and say who got in an accident. Very hard.
Yeah.
But if I get the last 2 years of your phone records and the last 2 years of your break comes second by second, it doesn't take a genius to figure out who you are, because guess what? The car is parked at 2 a.m. in your garage, right? And so that data is not protected. I find that amazing. And that data has, today is the biggest loophole to the Fourth Amendment that there is. And yeah, cars, I often tell people, cars are special.
Yes.
Not in ways you want them to, but cars are special.
So, are there things that we could do, without being a hermit and buying a 1940s car? Are there ways that we could still get the benefits of current cars and mitigate what gets stored? I mean, clearly we talked about, like, if you sell the car, wipe the data before you sell the car. Probably should wipe the data as soon as you buy a car.
Yes.
You don't want to inherit
That's
anyone
something
else's
people do
data.
not understand, that you should do that too, because believe it or not, some of the things that are stored in there, for instance, are the authentication keys of mobile apps. And so you may have somebody else that is still on your, that started an account with their mobile app of their manufacturer and sold the car. They may have not any idea, or they may know, and you buy it. And in their pocket, they have essentially a spare key of your car. They can locate your car, unlock it, start it, and do all sorts of things. And in fact, that's the number one way in which domestic abuse is perpetrated nowadays with cars, is by abusing these tools that come as convenience features, right? And right in your pocket, control of your car, and unfortunately, they're being heavily abused. But also, you have theft, right? People show up at your house and they start your car and they take it in the middle of the night, and you have no idea because you didn't delete the data from the car, right? So yes, please do that when you buy a car.
Let me interrupt you there. Does your tool provide kind of a walkthrough on how to disable those types of features or reset them?
Yeah, so for some cars, yes. So
Okay.
some cars have adopted a protocol that we created, and so some cars, yes. And later this year, we're also gonna create an expansion in the instruction set to modify the privacy settings of your cars, because cars now start to have privacy settings. And so we figured, well, shouldn't you know what to change to what? Because sometimes they're really not intuitive, or they're not working the way you think that they actually work based on how they're phrased. So yeah,
Uncheck
we
this
want to
button
help
if
people
you
do
don't
all of
want us
that.
to stop not doing this.
Yeah, the double negatives and and all of that. Yeah, so yeah, delete data when you buy a car, when you sell a car or rent a car, please delete it. And again, if you are in the middle of your ownership, I think it's very wise to go to Vehicle Privacy Report, understand what your car does, and use the free tools that we give you. Go on the site of the manufacturer and opt out of data. Ask them to delete the old data if they allow you to do that. Go and see what your auto finance company does, and if not, demand for better. Right? Again, we give you a lot of actions. All of them are free, and I think it's a good 5 minutes well spent.
Gotcha. And I assume things like, if you're renting a car, bring your own USB power port adapter, like the cigarette lighter adapter, bring your own.
So if you plug into the cigarette lighter, typically it's that's safe because only power goes through. When I rent cars because I travel a lot, and I always bring with me a data filter, a USB data filter, right? It's a USB dongle, right? That attaches to your power cord and lets the data flow through and not I'm sorry, the power flow through and not the data, right?
You don't want the
So
opposite.
yeah, exactly. You don't want the opposite. Yeah. You want to make sure it's the right two pins that are enabled. But yeah, this way you can charge your phone, and yeah, you're not going to be using the convenience of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And when I listen to your podcast, I listen to it through the speaker of the phone instead of playing through the speakers of the car. And I'm totally happy with that.
Yeah. Are there things that you're kind of concerned about what's coming down the line?
Well, what I know that part of your audience is more, more technically, advanced. These are professionals in
Mhm.
security and CISOs. And um, I think that people have underestimated and forgotten about cars as an endpoint.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you should really start to think about your car just like your cell phones and your laptops. And if you are, if you're listening to the podcast, I'm sure that you care about privacy and
Yeah.
security, and you don't want to be scammed. And again, I think you really need to start to think about the things that you do with your phone and with your laptop for good hygiene. You want to start to do exactly the same about your car. And you may not know exactly what that means. Reach out and ask for advice. Again, we have a lot of free tools and free advice on our website. But I always invite people, go and reach out, because sometimes we hear stories from consumers, honestly, we had not thought about.
Yeah.
And this allows us to think forward about what else can we do to help consumers.
So, what are some of those surprising stories that you've heard?
So, look, last month, for instance, a survivor of domestic abuse reached out, and she shared the story in which her ex created a duplicate of the key and was able to, and probably dropped something in her car or was using the mobile app to locate the car, and was able to get inside her vehicle and do things that were not good. Um, and and we actually had never thought about these. I have a rogue spare key.
Yeah.
Um, And and when she took the dealership asked her for $1,000 to be able to do what is called a hard reset of the car, and you need to recalibrate all the sensors to make sure that any code, anything that was done, etc., is out, right?
$1,000. Oh my goodness.
And she didn't have $1,000,
Yeah.
right? And this was an important story for us because we've always been collaborating with associations that are in this space. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. We filed comments in the past with the FCC on security measures that need to be in place with vehicles because they create harm for consumers that find themselves into these kind of very difficult situations. But there's a law that the manufacturer are trying to pass at the federal level that was granting some protections for survivors, and I think that those were great, but also was granting three beautiful gifts to the industry. One was that that law would preempt any state law. So all
Yeah.
state laws that are trying to regulate this would go out, and no state would ever be able to pass any additional protections for survivors of abuse. It will grant immunity to manufacturers on anything that they do or they don't do. And the manufacturers are given the ability to decide at their sole discretion, there's no appeal process, to decide what is technically feasible that they will do versus what is, sorry, we can't help you. And the reason why that story was important for me is because, again, I had never thought about it. And had that law passed, what are you going to do to help these people?
Yeah.
Uh, because states at that point are handcuffed. They cannot say, oh, by the way, there should be some protection for consumers. They don't have $1,000 and they need to have the systems reset. And what are we going to be doing for those? And so again, I'm always keen to learn from consumers, because whatever scam situation, theft, glitch that you have experienced, we always want to learn about those because typically it's the tip of the iceberg that helps us think harder about what's below the surface and how can we fix it.
Yeah. It's people that have an experience that you haven't had that allows you to look at the
That's
car
right.
in a different way.
That's right.
Crazy. Any parting advice as we wrap things up today?
Um, Take a look at your car. Look it up look up the VIN. It's written. There's a little window in the windshield. There's a little sticker on the door jamb of your driver. it's on your insurance card. Type in your VIN on vehicle privacy report. I promise you, you will look at your car in a different way, and take actions. Don't be shy. I think that some people like me live in states where we don't have a lot of rights, but there's still things I can do.
Mhm.
And I think if more of us take actions, and the more we go and tell your dealership, your rental company, your auto finance companies that you actually care, the more it's likely that they will do something. In fact, there's already hundreds of companies that have started to do good things, and I think it's important that we try to use our dollars to vote and make sure that more of those things happen.
Yeah. And do you have any white papers or reports for any particular groups of people that would be helpful?
Yes, thank you. We're for CISO specifically, and for anybody who's really in security, we've taken this concept of the forgotten endpoint about cars, and we've written a little white paper about it, and it's available at privacyforcars.com/CISO, CISO. And thank you for reminding me of that, Chris. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's my guilty pleasure. I have blue hair. I'm easy to find, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'm very, very easy to find over there. And then, of course, you can go to privacyforcars.com. We have a big contact us page. We have resources for consumers. We have resources for businesses. So whoever you are, hopefully there's something that you can learn in there that can make your life better.
Awesome. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Chris, I'm super grateful that you had me here again. Big fan, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.